So as far as trading between nations, if you study my other tutorials on economics, for the multipolar world economic order, chain block cyber accounts will work this way. Uh, it'll be a service free provided by the governments throughout the world, and it will work with a blockchain encryptions. And so think of it as an analogy as a credit card. You can use the blockchain for people to buy things cyberly using digital accounts. And so nations can trade with each other digitally with uh, chain block encrypted cyber transactions, but in such a way that you know how Bitcoin is used as an analogy. You know how Bitcoin is used. Well, I want to do away with cyber uh, bitcoins or cyber currencies, like companies that coin their own money cyberly. Like take for example Trump's World Liberty crypto. So I don't believe in people having cryptocurrencies of their own. It shouldn't be allowed because it's a pump and dump scheme or a boom and bust cycle where they get to keep the crypto and transition it into blue chip companies while their shareholders investing in their crypto gets wiped out. So it's a pump and dump or a boom and bust cycle. So it should be outlawed for people to have their own crypto as far as currency. That should be illegal. Like look at Bitcoin. For right now, Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, which is a one Bitcoin is equivalent to a one or a zero of a binary code. But one Bitcoin is worth $103,000 in the stock markets. Can you imagine? Just either a binary one or a zero in a computer is worth $103,000 in cash, in physical cash. That's outrageous. That's look at the one of the CEO for Bitcoins. He got arrested for having a Ponzi scheme with his crypto allowance of his company. So Trump is another con artist with his World Liberty crypto. He's going to extort the world for tariffs, for they can launder money into his crypto, and then he's going to use boom and bust cycles in order to skim money off of his investors and invest it in blue chip companies in Wall Street. And while his investors in the crypto ends up with zero, they end up taking a loss. So it should be illegal for con artists to have cryptocurrencies. It should be illegal. What should exist is blockchain networks. So this is what I mean by this. Imagine a worldwide unified system that is a interchange, blockchain interchange. So what I mean by that is this, as an analogy. You know when you go into a store and you use a credit card, you swipe the credit card, you know how much you have in the bank in your checking account. So you take your checking debit card and you swipe it. And the machine knows how much to charge your checking account. And so you don't have to pay to use your your checking account card at the stores, your debit card. You don't have to pay as a customer. The only one that pays it is the merchant has an interchange fee. So imagine if even the merchant doesn't have to pay an interchange fee. So that's like an analogy. Chain block digital transactions will work in the same way. Will work in the same way. So you can trade with who you want to trade with your account balance, and it's all encrypted with chain block technologies. So the accounts are accounted for on the ledgers. But the good thing about this is that the merchant doesn't have to pay an interchange fee. So the merchant can sell their products without worrying about being charged 3 to 6% of the transaction fees of the total amount, which normally when people swipe credit cards, the merchant has to pay like 3 or 6% of the overall price of the product that they're selling as far as the interchange fees. So in order to do away with that for the merchant, with with this chain block system, now the merchant doesn't have to pay nothing when they sell something to their customers. They can do it for free by processing this blockchain network system. So not only does the customer can rely on using digital cash accounts, meaning their bank account digitally, they can go in with their phones, or if they like, use their credit cards. But if you want to do trading digitally, you can use your phone with QR codes, or you can scan your phone. But at the same time, as far as cyber cryptocurrency, it should be outlawed for individuals to have the right to create their own cryptocurrencies, because it's basically a pump and dump scheme. It's con artists with Ponzi schemes of creating their own cryptocurrencies. It's like a perverted version of NFT cards, like Trump NFT cards. Like that's gonna be some type of currency. If you put stupid pictures of you, that somehow that's gonna be currency exchange. It's ridiculous how grifters can run amok on the world stage. And so this cryptocurrency, with people being allowed to create their own cryptocurrency, that's nothing but a Ponzi scheme, a pump and dump, boom and bust cycle. And they start skimming money off the owners, off of these investors, and they start laundering that money into Wall Street, for they can launder it into actual real companies, real Fortune 500 companies, you know? And why the investors of the crypto end up losing their investments in crypto companies like Trump's World Liberty, or any other buffoons cryptocurrencies. In other words, it should be illegal for individuals to have the authority to print and coin their own cryptocurrencies, because all it would lead to is corruption of robbery in Wall Street, by people being able to crypto their own currencies and then sell it as cyber currencies, and then wipe away their investors' shareholdings in boom and bust cycles, while their owners take the real money and launder it into Wall Street companies. And they end up with real board shared ownership of real companies that actually provide services for customers, not this fantasy cryptocurrency and NFT cards. You know, that's just a con artist. These type of things are for con artists like Trump. So, like Trump, he'll be using crypto, world liberties, to steal money off the actual cash that it takes to buy these cryptocurrencies. Can you imagine Bitcoin? One binary code, either a 1 or a 0, one binary code is worth $103,000 of cash money in order to invest in one Bitcoin, which is ridiculous. It's all speculatory. It's all Ponzi scheme, a bust and boom cycles. When the investors feel like dropping the shares, they're skimming money off the original amount of their cash investors that buy into this stupid idea of crypto, like Bitcoin or world liberty of Trump next grifting Ponzi schemes. But what we can learn from this is that I believe that no individual should have the right to print their own cryptocurrencies or create their own cryptocurrencies. That should be outlawed, because it would just lead to a bunch of highway robberies on the internet. What by makeshift companies creating their own cyber coins or cyber cryptos coins, and it's all going to lead to a lot of fraud and theft in the markets of global stock markets. So it should be done away with. But the blockchain internet of tomorrow's commerce in a multipolar economic system. So this is what I mean. People should have the right to spend their money how they feel fit, and in the future, people can use digital accounts. So with their bank, they know how much money they have saved up in their banks. So if they decide to use a credit card or their phones to do transactions, digital transactions, it's consider it like an interchange fee or interchange system, sort of like an analogy like a credit card. So when you swipe the card, the computer reads the barcode or the strip in back of the card or the digital chip. It reads it and it knows how much you have in your checking account, and you can transition a purchase that way. But with crypto blockchain or with blockchain transactions, that's not say crypto, that's say blockchain transactions. So blockchain transactions, you can use your phone and scan your phone, or you can order things on the internet. If you want to go in person, you can scan your credit cards, or you can scan your phone. But it's a blockchain system in the multipolar world of tomorrow. So what I mean by that is this: that there's no more interchange fees for merchants. There's no more interchange fees. So the merchants can sell their products without having fear of being charged 3% or 6% of the product or service values. So normally credit cards charge an interchange fee of 3 to 6% of the total value of the total price of the invoice. So merchants have to give up their profits 3 to 6% for the interchange fees. So the total price of the invoice, they got to give up 3 to 6% of that value, the merchants. So it hampers their profitabilities, business profitabilities. So I truly believe in having blockchain accounting, that the merchants don't get charged nothing, as well as the customers don't get charged nothing, because it's a free service provided by the government. It's a highway of free commerce that you are able to use transitional systems, whether it be digitally through cyber transactions with blockchain technologies to account for the ledgers and the journals of accounting. But it's digital blockchain technologies that it will be provided for free. So you can use your phones or credit cards and transaction purchases or sales of commodities without worrying about being charged for the service. So it's a blockchain digital technology ledger and accounting journal books for accounting. Now, businesses digitally with a blockchain will have autonomy. So businesses, when it comes to government sanctioning businesses from preventing government, when it comes to the government preventing other businesses, when they tariff other governments, or when they go to embargo other governments, or when they go to sanction other governments, governments like to interfere with private sector companies and not allow them to do business with other governments. So politicians use economics as a weapon, and they try to impede the private sector companies from doing business abroad with other nations. Because of politics, they use economics as a weapon to prevent the private sector companies from doing business with other companies or other countries. So in the future, I believe that there should be autonomy and discretion of privacy. So in the future, it should be illegal for any government or any politician to impede any private sector company from doing business with any company they feel like doing business with, or any government that they feel they want to do business with. So in the future, the legal systems that I'm trying to bring upon the new world economic systems are that companies, private companies, and governments have the right to do business with whoever they feel like they want to do business with. If they want to pick whatever companies they want to do business with throughout whatever countries on the world, it's up to the priority and the right and the liberty of that company to do business with whoever they feel they want to do business with, whether it be in the private sector or governments. The same for governments. They should have the right to do business with whoever they feel they want to do business with, and do it discreet and private. They should have the right to privacy and discretion to do business with whoever they want to do business with. So in other words, I want to outlaw tariffs, sanctions, and embargoes. Simple as that. I want every nation to have anonymity to and discretion and privacy and the right to privacy to do business as they feel fit with whatever nation, without other nations imposing sanctions, tariffs, and embargoes. So I want to outlaw in the new world economic system of the multipolar world that's emerging throughout the world, mainly in the global south and Eastern Europe, and is catching on in the Western hemispheres of Europe. I want to make it illegal, globally, make it illegal for any nation when it comes to economics to use economics as a weapon. So I want to make it illegal for nations to use economics as a weapon. So no more, I want to outlaw in international law. I want to make it possible to outlaw globally any country having the ability to impose tariffs, sanctions, or embargoes on any nation. And to have an anonymity system of digital chain block trading between businesses, individuals, and governments. I'm trying to provide a free service globally that is overseen centrally, globally, by all nations agreeing to the chain block system, the digital chain block system. So as an analogy, it's like the interchange system, but without no fees. So if you can imagine as an analogy, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, that's credit card systems that use an interchange system. Well, this chain block cyber system is a digital worldwide web of anonymity chain block transactional central systems. So it is free to everybody. It's free for the government. It's free for the private sector companies. It's free for individual consumers. So it's basically a AI supercomputer that makes it possible for businesses and individuals and countries to do financial transactions with each other, cyber with chain block ledgers and accountings and journals for accounting, for purposes of honest accounting purposes. So mutually, so let me explain it this way. When you feel like buying something over the internet, you could do it with chain block technology for free. If you want to go into a store and use your phone to swipe, the chain block technology is for free. For yourself as a customer and for the business owner as a merchant. Everything is done for free in the chain block world system. And it's not controlled by no government. is all agreed upon by all nations on earth. This chain block technology is all agreed upon by all nations on earth to be a free service globally. It's not centrally managed by no government or no business sector or no banks. It's a neutral system. It's a world neutral system agreed upon by all nations on earth as chain block highways of digital tradings of commerce. So it's a neutral system that keeps the customers, the businesses, and the government's accounts private. Private. And businesses, unless it's used by criminals. If it's used by criminals to do criminal activities like drug trafficking or sex trafficking or killing, assassinations. So if it's used by criminals, then law enforcement can intervene. But other than that, if it's used for business, legit business purposes, then it should be adhered to. Companies should have privacies, businesses should have privacy. And I'm trying to do away with taxation. You got to look at my videos to see how I do away with taxation, all the way from the micro to the macro scales of national economics and global economics. I'm trying to do away with 100% of taxation for everybody: government, banking, private sectors, and individuals, employees' paychecks. I'm doing. You gotta watch my other videos on my channel on economics to understand how I'm doing away with taxation across the board, from the employees to their employers to the government. I'm doing away with all taxation for everybody. So these are my theories. You got to study all my videos on economics on this channel that I have on YouTube. So every nation will have equal purchasing power when it comes to their sovereign currencies, and they will use this anonymity of chain block globally to do transitions between bankers, between individuals' checking accounts, between nations trading with each other, and there will be zero taxation across the board for businesses, corporations, and citizens. So I'm outlawing taxation globally for everybody, and then phasing in crypto, not crypto, but chain block transitions. And every nations have their equal purchasing power with their sovereign currencies, and no more would it be legal to sanction or embargo or tariff nations. That will be outlawed. So with this type of digital chain block systems, people can do businesses with anybody they want to do business with legally. As far as legal transactions, people will be able to buy what they want to buy with chain block technologies, companies with chain block technologies, government with chain block technologies, and all their sovereign currencies will have equal purchasing power of every nation's sovereign currencies. And it will be illegal for any nation to embargo, tariff, or sanction any other nation. And this chain block digital accounting cyber system will be provided for free to every nation globally. The only thing that will be monitored is criminal activities like drug traffickers, sex traffickers, or any organized crime that's being committed. Then law enforcement will audit the blockchain to find out if there was any criminal activities. But as far as taxation, I'm doing away with taxation for everybody. So when people work, you get to keep 100% of your check. When businesses profit, you get to net 100% of your profit without no taxation being imposed on businesses or individual employees. When it comes to governments, I'm also doing away with taxation. So you have to look at all my videos on economics to understand how I'm doing away with taxation across the board. But at the same time, At the same time, I want to make every nation's sovereign currencies have equal purchasing power throughout the world. And yes, banking is a necessary system. Bankers and banking is a necessary system. So even the banks get to profit from their investments 100% without no taxations being imposed upon the bank. You got to look at all my tutorials and the evolution of my theories to understand what I'm explaining here in this particular tutorial. Um, so once you study and analyze everything that I'm saying, and I've been evolving in this channel, I've been evolving my theories to perfect it as an economic theologian. Now, like I said, it should be illegal for individuals to cyber and coin their own cryptocurrency because it leads to schemers and Ponzi schemers and con artists. Uh, you shouldn't be illegal. You shouldn't be able to pump individual currencies. In my world of economics, every sovereign nation is controlling their currency supplies. So every nation's sovereign currencies are equal purchasing power. And so it should be illegal for any individual to be able to coin their own cyber coins in the stock markets or in the internet. It should be illegal to pump and dump up and boost, boom and bust cycles like Bitcoin. Can you imagine one binary code is worth $103,000 in hard cash? Can you imagine that? The speculation in that? And all they gotta do is drop the stocks to pump and dump. And they skimmed the money off and they invested in blue chip companies. While the original investor that took their hard cash to invest 103,000 in one binary code of a computer system, 103,000 is wiped out in cash. So it's a con artist. It's a Ponzi scheme. Bitcoin, world liberty, all of that is pump and dump schemes and skimming off their investors and laundering those monies into the stock exchange of real companies that provide services and products and commodities. So it should be illegal for individuals to have the ability to print their own cryptocurrencies and then speculate it in the open world markets of commerce. That should be illegal because it will lead to nothing but Ponzi schemes. So, but I do believe in a blockchain world digital system that will be providing that all nations would agree to phase in the world multipolar system of tomorrow economics. All nations would agree to a chain block international system of digital trade transitions of businesses, customers, and countries doing trade deals. So the chain block will be neutral globally for all nations and everybody throughout the world to use as a free service of interchange without no pricing being added upon it. So as an analogy, you know how Visa, MasterCard, American Express, they charge the merchant 3 to 6% for the transaction. So the merchant has to take out 3 to 6% of whatever product or services they're providing. So that means they lose 6% of the sales. And so it's a form of taxation to use that type of interchange. So the chain block economy network systems is a free service for everybody. It's a free service for the customer. It's a free service for the businesses. It's a free service for the government to do government trading with anybody globally. So these systems are chain block systems have to be neutral and accepted globally as a network systems of digital ledgers and journals for accounting purposes. And so there will be no taxation across the board. So no taxations for the employees, no taxations for their boss, for the businesses, for the bosses, no taxation for the banking systems, no taxation for the government. You gotta watch my other videos. Study all my videos on economics so you can understand what I'm trying to explain here. So y'all won't be confused. You gotta watch all my economic tutorial videos. And I have been evolving from prior videos, so you gotta keep up with the lessons of my evolution of my economical theories to understand and appreciate as a theologian what I'm explaining as a philosopher of economics. So, just to cap off this tutorial video, I don't believe in people having the right to print their own and coin their own cyber coins and then sell it and speculate it in Wall Street. That leads to corruption, that leads to Ponzi schemers, that leads to boom and bust cycles with the owners of the crypto companies that get to skim the money and then launder it into Wall Street blue chip companies, and they end up holding shares on board members' companies while the original investors that invested in their cryptos get wiped out. Bitcoin is a perfect example. Can you imagine one lately, as of this video making, one Bitcoin is worth $103,000 hard cash to invest in one Bitcoin. Can you imagine that? And that one Bitcoin is just a 1 or 0 binary code in a computer. And you're willing to invest $103,000 of your hard-earned cash, hard money to buy one binary code? And just for it to be a boom and bust cycle of speculation, for the owners to rip $103,000 off of you of hard cash and that one binary code of a Bitcoin crypto currency. Can you imagine being wiped out as an investor, taking your life savings and invested in a speculative cyber coin that somebody made up? Like, look at Trump with world liberty. You think he won't skim that money and short the investors of their hard-earned cash as they invested in this crypto? And then he will take that money invested in blue chip companies for himself. In actual companies that provide services of goods and commodities and labor. While the investors, the stupid investors that invested their cash into the crypto is wiped out. So it leads to corruption when individuals can print their NFT cards and use it as currency stocks, like Trump with his NFT cards, thinking that somehow there's going to be security bond status or security bills, that somehow he can trade with nations and they can use his NFT cards as IOUs for imagine like an analogy. Trump thinks that his NFT cards are like treasury bills, security bonds, that he can speculate his NFT cards in Wall Street, and investors are going to invest in it that's the Treasury Department security bonds and security bills to be sold in stock exchange, which is ridiculous when you think about it. It's frivolous and ridiculous. It's a grift. So it shouldn't be allowed individuals to create their own cryptocurrencies or NFT cards that they can try to sell like it's some type of central bank treasury department bond IOUs of security bonds and treasury bills and the central banks of nations. Like, how stupid can you be to put NFT cards and try to change it in the Wall Street or sell it to people like it's some type of cryptocurrency, which is a grift, in my opinion. A full of Trumpery grift, like Trump NFT cards or Trump's world liberty. There's nothing but Ponzi schemes. So what I'm suggesting is chain block digital ledgers and journals for accounting purposes, for honest accounting purposes. That this digital network is mutually agreed by all nations and provided for free for everybody, for the nations, for the banks, for the businesses, for the customers, for the employees. Everything is digitally can be chain block global virtual systems that In the computers, y'all can, or using your smartphones or credit cards, y'all can do this all for free across the board. So to understand my taxation initiatives to do away with taxation across the board globally, where there comes whether it is no taxation for the banks, no taxation for the businesses or owners, no taxation for the employees' paychecks, no taxation for the government provided services for their citizens. So you got to look at my other videos and study it on to understand the economical theories, and it will keep on evolving. My theories will keep on evolving as I study the subject further and contemplate and analyze the system as a theologian, as an economical philosopher. So this is just one of many videos that I have made on government reform, not only in the United States. These hypotheses of theories, this contemplation of a thesis as a theologian, economic, political science theologian. So study all my videos, not only on the reforming the American government and also reforming the United Nations, but study the United Nations grant initiatives, study my global chain block accounts of ledgers and journals for honest accounting purposes, and study my videos on every nation sovereign currency should have the equal purchasing power parity globally, and that we should do away and make it outlawed for any nation to impose tariffs or economical embargoes or sanctions on any other nation. So study all my economical tutorial videos, and also how to reform not only America but the United Nations. And so, and as you need, when governments or businesses are using when the governments or nations are using blockchains. Oh, this is another thing. As far as cyber currencies or governments cryptocurrencies, because the government is the only one that should be able to coin currencies, whether it be crypto cyber currencies or whether it be cash paper currency. The government should be the only one to coin that. No individual should have the right to create their own currency, cryptocurrencies. And y'all shouldn't speculate on cryptocurrency or cash, paper cash. I want to do away. I want to get everything equal purchasing power. So I want to make it illegal for any country or investor to speculate on nations' currencies and devaluate or inflate the purchasing parity power of currencies. I want it neutral. So I want all currencies of all nations to be equal purchasing power. And when it comes to cryptocurrencies, the nations that coin their money is controlled by the government of each nation. And it all has equal purchasing power parity globally. So the cyber currency of nations will have equal purchasing power. Their paper cash currency of all nations should have equal purchasing power globally. That should be a norm, a law that, and we shouldn't be able to speculate currencies up and down, to devaluate currencies, overinflate currencies, or devalue and cause currencies to have runaway inflation of devaluations. We should do away with that. The Moody system of devaluating currencies should be done away with. The world Moody systems of credit ratings that devaluate nations' currencies and make them have runaway inflation, inferior purchasing powers, all that should be done away with. So globally, every sovereign nation's currency will have equal purchasing power. You won't be able to talk the currency up or down as far as devaluing it or overinflating it. So they all are equal. Every nation's currency globally will be considered equal purchasing power, as well as the nation's cryptocurrencies. that every nation should be responsible of their cryptocurrencies, and equally, the cryptocurrencies, you can't speculate it, you can't invest in it like Bitcoin or World Liberty Ponzi schemings. You can't invest in it, the crypto. In other words, you can't talk it up to overinflate it, or you can't devaluate it and talk it down. So, as well as the paper currency, all have equal purchasing power of all nations globally, and their currencies, paper currencies. Also, the nation's cryptocurrencies will be considered equal globally. So, I want to make it illegal to speculate on nations' valued currencies. I want to make it legal for the stock markets to be able to overinflate nations' currencies, or disinflate and devaluate nations' currencies to inferior status, like they do with the Zimbabwe dollar. Because America, the West, wants to cripple the third world, they want to give nations' currency inferior purchasing power. So nations are stuck in poverty and they got to print $1 trillion bills just to buy a slice of bread. That should be illegal. That should be illegal. So I want to make every nation throughout the world have equal purchasing power with their sovereign currencies permanently. For all nations to have equal purchasing power with their sovereign currencies. Make it illegal to speculate the currency up or down when it comes to value. That should be illegal globally to do that. Also, it should be illegal to speculate on nation sovereign cryptos accounts that they provide for their citizens as crypto ledgers. You shouldn't be able to talk the crypto up or down of sovereign nations when they allocate either hard cash to their citizens or crypto accounts through their banking systems. It should all be equal purchasing power, whether it be crypto, sovereign nations' currency through their banks, or whether it be sovereign nations printing and coining their own paper and coin currencies. It should all be equal purchasing power permanently. It should be illegal globally to speculate on nations' currencies and talk it up or down when it comes to value. That should be illegal. It should be illegal for nations' crypto central banks that they provide their citizens with their cyber cryptocurrencies accounts. That should be illegal to speculate currencies up or down, whether it be crypto, sovereign nations' currency, central bank systems, or whether it be their coin cash or dollar bill, or not coin cash or paper currency. So, by doing these overall systems, it will be a better, and of course, y'all will say, well, won't that flood the market with a lot of money? Yeah, but you will still have rational price controls. In order to keep prices accountable to normal prices, the world will set commodity good pricing. So the governance of the world leaders, their countries, globally, the countries would set a marker when it comes to fair global prices on commodity goods in the open market. So you don't have a runaway inflation when it comes to a lot of money chasing after limited commodities in the open markets. So there will be rational prices set globally by commerce to have price kept in check when people go buy the things at the store markets and buy things off the shelves or order things through the internet. Commodity goods will have a global price check, price controls. So like that, you don't have too much money chasing after limited commodity goods and services. So, and also the courts, there will be an international norm of trading between businesses, individuals, and even countries trading with each other. So the courts of that will oversee this world commerce system, there will be agreed upon contractual norms between governments, businesses, and employees, and even customer consumptions. There will be norms to oversee this multipolar world economic system to be held accountable with honest accounting principles. So as far as banking goals and central banks, they will be able to lend money for interest. As far as the stock markets of corporations, they will be able to, investors will be able to invest in corporation stock shares, and banks will be able to lend money to businesses for interest. But all of this will be done with free, eliminating taxation. The government will be able to print and coin their own currencies, and have their ability. The government has oversight and management policies based on my theories to provide their citizens with government services for free of charge. So they can provide it to the citizens, and the government are not held in debt for it as far as taxation obligations. The government won't incur debt for it. So this is what I mean when it comes to government. They can print money free of debt to provide their citizens with health care, to provide their citizens with retirement pensions, to provide their citizens with infrastructures like roads, highways, and bridges, to provide their citizens with law enforcement and emergency response, firemen's, police departments, medevac, and that all of this will be done and funded by the government free of charge to their citizens. And the government is not held indebted for it. So they can print money to provide these services, these government services to their citizens, tax-free and debt-free. The government can provide these services. They can print the money to provide for government services, and it's not taxed to the citizen, and the government is not on the financial hook for it as far as tax or financial debt. So as far as government, their responsibilities is to provide their citizens with these services free of charge. So how would that work? Well, the government is in charge of coining and printing their own currencies. And so they'll set a budget allocation for printing currencies in order to provide financial funding for these services. So they can build highways, bridges, roads. They can have free universal health care. They can have retirement pension plans for their citizens, or disability pension plans for people with disabilities. So all of this is the government funded, free of service for the citizens, and the government doesn't have a financial debt to it. So let's take America, for example, as an analogy. America depends on the Federal Reserve to print their money, and the Federal Reserve sells debts to the world in American IOUs with treasury bills and security bonds. So America is deeply gouged with debt that they can't pay back. America has $36 trillion of debt because the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department of Congress, allows the oligarchs, private bankers of the Federal Reserve to print money and lend it to America government as a form of IOUs. And they sell it with treasury bills and security bonds to the rest of the world. For the nations global can buy our debt. And then what ends up happening is that the fiscal pork barrel spending creates so much debt for America that even the interest payments is not payable. And we keep on worrying about the nation becoming bankrupt because we don't know how to tax our way out of it. So these type of systems are inept. So I want to do it not only for America, my theologies of economics, but for every nation on earth. That sovereign nations have the right to provide services and for their citizens. Government's responsibilities is to build highway, bridges, roads, infrastructure for their citizens. At the same time, they have the right to provide emergency responders, police, fire, medevacs, and they have the right to provide decent health care free of charge. All of this is free of charge by the government because the government, now that they don't have to print money in debt to provide these services, they can print money free of debt in order to provide these services to their citizens and not be the government be in a financial hook for it. With like the analogy I used about America and the Federal Reserve selling IOUs in the open market globally, and America doesn't know how to raise the debt ceiling no more because we had the $35 trillion debt that we don't know how to tax our way out of it. So every nation, because America and the BRIC, the Bretton Woods agreements and Jekyll Island bankers and the Federal Reserve and all that and the World Trading Organization, it's all trickle down economics, the way the world economic system works today. But my theology is for a better distribution of the wealth of nations and everybody within their prospective nations with you when you tender good faith economics. So it's like a evolution of Adam Smith. At least my theories are. So now, like I said, government is responsible to provide services for their citizens, free of debt to their citizens and free of debt to their governments. Prospectively, governments can coin their own money, print their own money to provide these services, free of debt for their citizens and free of debt to the government themselves. So, like I said, the government has a responsibility for infrastructure, emergency response, health care, and retirement pension plans. And also, they got to set a budget for defense, because every government has the right to provide defense for their nations as far as the defense industries, military industries. So, but the government, like I said, they can print their and coin their currency, coins, and cash, paper money to provide these services for their nations and everybody that lives within their nations. So mainly is to have countries, third world nations, be able to evolve. Now, the way the world economic system works is a Ponzi scheme that was set up from Bretton Woods through Jekyll Island to create the Federal Reserves of America. And then we created after World War II the IMF, the WTO, the Bank of Settlements, the World Bank System, the interchange systems, Moody's, as AAA ratings for nations' creditworthiness. So all of that led to America controlling the world with a world's hegemonic currency that pegs the fossil dependency of fossil fuels and gasolines throughout the world. So it's all a trickle down Ponzi scheme, in my opinion, of this system, this world system that exists now by this world sole hegemonic power, and the rest of the world starves with trickle down Ponzi scheme economics of America's global control over the global world order, economic order. So my theologies are to make every nation equal, have equal opportunity, equal wealth, equal distribution of the wealth of nations, and a fair theory of morality when it comes to my theologies of fair exchange, not only for commerce, not only for citizens and employees, laborers, but governments themselves. So you got to study all my video tutorials on my theories of economics and political science to understand and comprehend what I am proposing in my theologies as a professor of economics and political science, how I want to reform not only America political system, but also the United Nations evolutionary systems to adapt to the future and meet the obligation needs of globally that the United Nations need to evolve and adapt to. So study all my videos on this channel and comprehend my theologies. I'm a quantum physicist, theologian. I'm an engineer, mechanical engineer. I'm a political science major and an economic theologian. So study all my videos on this YouTube channel. So to conclude real quick, the banks so the banks can be accountants. They can lend money out, sovereign money of their respective governments. They can lend it out in the stock exchange for interest. The banks in the private sector and the stock markets, they can all function tax free and with global price controls on commodity goods. But they can all function tax free. The banks, the Wall Street Stock Exchange, and businesses and individual customers with their bank accounts and their checking accounts, everything can be done tax free. And so the banks are necessary to float the private sector free markets and have accountability with accounting. So the banks in their respective governments can be in control of the private sectors. But and like I said, they can lend money out for interest, reasonable interest rates, but everything is done tax free. Uh, from the grassroots of micro to the macro scales of international commerce. So, as far as the governments are concerned, they're the ones that can coin the money, and they're the only ones that can coin the money and the money supply, the governments. So, so the banks are not in control. The banks will have to work equilibrium with the government to allocate the bank's amount of allotted sovereign currency. So the banks can work with the governments in their allotted sovereign currencies, and the banks are allowed to borrow money from other countries' currencies. So the banks are free to not only borrow money from their national bank or their national government as far as currencies, but the bank also are free to borrow money from other countries' currencies. And the banks can allocate their portfolio investments in their shareholders' stock exchange of companies as the bank feels fit to invest in the free commerce markets and the open markets. Uh, yes, the banks have a role to play. The banks will know exactly what companies are being responsible, fiscally responsible, and are turning out profits. So the banks has a role to play in the private sector and free commerce. Uh, but the governments will be strictly in control of allotting and printing and coining their sovereign currencies. And every government's currencies will have equal purchasing power permanently. Every country's currencies will, in the open markets globally, will have equal purchasing power. Now, every nation government will be able to print their own currency budgets for providing government services free of debt. So the government doesn't have to sell IOUs or treasury bills and security bonds in order to print money to provide for infrastructure, first responders, emergency response, police departments, fire departments, emergency medevacs, or to provide free affordable health care, universal health care to all citizens, and to provide for retirement pension plans for their population retirement needs. So every government will allot a budget for themselves free of debt. So the citizens of their countries are not taxed, and the governments are not held in debt for providing these services to their citizens. So it's a world where zero taxation. So imagine employees, they work, they get 100% of their earnings without no taxations. Imagine companies, they profit, they get to net 100% of their profits. Banks, they lend money for free commerce, for interest, they get to collect their earnings of profits and pay zero taxation on it. as far as bankers and banking, central banks and banking and global banking. So the banks will be in charge of floating the stock exchange globally. Every national banks and international banks will be in charge of. Now the government will have to allot the banks allotted money for the banks to stimulate commerce, but the banks don't have to pay. They probably have to pay a small portion of interest back to the government for lending them that money. So the bank probably would have to reimburse the government for the government allowing the banks to trade their currencies, as far as investing in corporations and labor and materials in the free commerce sector globally, whether it be micro or macroeconomics. The bank will have to borrow money from the government, but the bank will have to pay a portion of that money back. Or, in other words, the bank will have an allotment set by the government of liquidity funds in order for that government to stimulate commerce within their nations. So the bank will get to profit off their investments when they lend to businesses, big businesses, small businesses, or individual loans for individuals. The bank will lend it out for interest, and they will get to net 100% of their interest, the banks. But in return for that right, the governments have to set an allotment of what the bank, as far as funding, will get. So the bank will say, okay, the bank performed, the bank stimulated commerce, the bank grew our economy. So the government allocates a allotment of funding of sovereign currencies to those banks that are performing and are providing the greatest companies, the greatest services that are stimulating commerce. So the governments will get to invest in the bank as long as the bank performs, and in return, the governments get to profit, or not. The government shouldn't be in the business of profiteering. The government shouldn't be in the business of profiteering. The banks should be in the business of profiteering. The government is there to be a public service. It should be free public service. Free public service. So the government allots their budgets to provide free healthcare, free infrastructure, free emergency response, free retirement plans, so pension plans. So the government is there to provide a service for their citizens and their populations. And so when it comes to the government responsibility of overseeing their banks, they can print a lot of money free of debt. The government gets to coin money free of debt and allot it to whatever banks are doing the best jobs in the private sector of commerce, stimulating the markets. So the government, as long as the banks are performing and they have the best investments, the best stimulations of economies, after the government audits the banks, not for tax purposes, but for performance purposes. And the governments can't use. It will be outlawed for the governments to pick winners and losers when it comes to tariff sanctions or embargoes. So when it comes to the banks trading with other banks globally of other nations, the government shouldn't interfere in that. When it comes to the banks trading with other banks globally, the pertaining governments don't, the government, it will be illegal for governments to interfere into commerce, to as far as imposing sanctions and tariffs and embargoes. That will be outlawed for governments to have that ability. So the banks have the right to protect free commerce and stimulate the markets globally, but they have to account for it with their with their portfolio performance. So they will get audited just for the fact that the governments will monitor their central banks to make sure that the banks are performing and stimulating commerce, micro and macro, international and national commerce. So micro for national and macro for global performance. The governments will say, okay, this bank performed good. Y'all get to allot it, y'all allotments of stimulated currencies. For the banks that don't perform, for the banks that are weak, for the banks that always do the wrong investments and never come out on top, the governments have the right to shut down their bank charter. So governments, the banks will have the responsibilities of performing their investments. And only the best banks will stay in business, and the weakest banks that don't perform as good or do bad jobs and doesn't return profits will be dischartered as a bank. So, and like this is has to be done globally as all nations unanimously picking this neutral system of multipolar economic systems for all nations to be considered equal at the table of commerce, and as well as the international laws that will oversee micro and macro economics nationally all the way up to the international levels. But it has to be done in the way I'm explaining in order for the system to be a fair distribution of the wealth of nations with tendered good faith when it comes to the theory of morality of commerce, honest accounting principles. So, as far as the credit system is concerned, yes, there will still be a credit system of printing money out of thin air and canceling debt out of thin air. So, the credit system will depend on the credit worthiness of the individual, the business, or the government. You have to have accountability when you lend out money. So, it will be up to the governments and their banks to print money out of thin air and to cancel debt out of thin air. That has to be like a co-banking committee along with government, co-banking private bankers and quasi private bankers and government to oversee printing money out of thin air and canceling debt out of thin air. And it will depend on credit worthiness. Even though all currencies will have equal purchasing power parity of all nations, but you will still have to be accountable for when you're transitioning your business activities, your consumption habits. You will still have to be accountable for credit worthiness. So it's not like you can borrow money and just walk away and not worry about paying back the money. No. If somebody lends you money, you got to pay them back. If somebody lends you money for interest, you got to pay that person back. Except government. Government has the right to print money free of debt to provide the services, basic services for their citizens. The banks have the right to print money for interest in order to stimulate the free commerce and free markets. So the banks have the right to lend money for interest as they feel whatever corporations are performing, whatever stock markets are performing, whatever shareholdings of companies shares are growing. You will still have to be accountable in commerce for services and consumption. And so, yes, people will still have to depend on credit worthiness of your how you could carry yourself when it comes to consuming or spending or borrowing money. But the government can coin money free of debt to stimulate and lend money to their bankers of their sovereign nations. But the government has to have oversight, quasi oversight, over the banking industry when it comes to reviewing the performance of the private bankers. But like I said, the government can print and coin money free of debt to provide nations' infrastructures, emergency response, universal health care, retirement, pension plans for their citizens. The government can print money free of debt for that. They don't have to tax their citizens, and the governments can coin the money for free to provide these services for their populations of their nation's citizens. And the government can set quarterly, fiscally, yearly printing of currency to lend to the banks. Now the banks have to pay a portion of that back to the government in order for the banks to be held accountable. Because it's not just free money for the banks and they get to profit 100% without being accountable. Their performance will depend by paying the government back a portion of their allocations, because the government is the one that's lending to them, and so the banks have to perform because they're given a financial responsibility by the government. When the government allocates free money or coining the currency, the banks have to perform. They have to be held accountable. So in order for the banks to perform, they have to pay a portion of interest back to the government. But, or let's put it like this. Let's put it like this. Let me change this feature on my theology. The government can coin money and currency for the banks. And the bank doesn't have to pay back to the government, but the government has oversight over the banks, their banks. The government has oversight. So if the bank doesn't perform, if the bank makes wrong-headed investments, if the shareholders are not making profits, if the government feels that the bank is incompetent, the government can shut down that charter of a bank. So the responsible banks, they could get money supply from their governments to invest and stimulate commerce within their government and globally in the private sector. And the banks don't have to pay back the government as long as the banks are earning profits. But the moment that the banks are investing and the profits are not returning back, underperforming banks will get liquidated. It will get liquidated, and the charter will be rescinded. So the governments will oversee their banks to make sure that the ones that are performing, they stay on top. The ones that are underperforming and the ones that are constantly showing irresponsible investments and negligent investments, those banks will be eradicated. So the banks don't have to pay back the government as long as they perform oversight in free commerce to make sure that the markets are being stimulated properly. But the banks can lend for interest to the private sector to make sure that that businesses are getting loans and are growing, to make sure that the employees are earning good salaries. The bank can oversee the private sector because the government can't micromanage free commerce. You got to let free commerce perform. And so the bank has a good idea of oversight over free commerce. But for that reason, like I said, the bank doesn't have to pay back the money supply of the nation as long as they perform and grow the economics of nations. And so the government can, like I said, print and coin their own currency supplies free of debt. Not only to lend the money through the banking systems, but also to provide for their citizens with public government services, infrastructure, highways, bridges, roads, emergency responders, police departments, fire departments, medevacs, social or retirement pension plans, for their elderlies or people with disabilities. So the government can print money free of debt for those public services, and to control the money supply that flows into banks. And so the banking system has to be a quasi governed oversight committees from their prospective governments, and their private bankers of their nations have to have like a committee board to make sure that the banks are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Eh, think about it like engine for my oil as an analogy. When you do an oil change, you gotta take out the old oil, and put new lubricant oil in it, and you gotta measure it just right for it can be equilibrium. You can't have inefficient oil in the engine or overflow your engine with oil. It has to be just balanced just right. So, as an analogy, and I'm not for fossil fuels, I'm for doing away with gasoline. So, don't take me like I love fossil fuels. When it comes to gasoline, I want to do away with it when it comes to cars and pollution. But it's an analogy. The government is the one that's in charge of keeping everything, the money supply, equilibrium. The government can print money out of thin air and cancel debt out of thin air. The government should have the ability to print money out of thin air and cancel debt out of thin air. And all nations will have equal purchasing power parity when it comes to their money supply. The banks, they get to keep 100% of their profits if they perform accordingly. Underperforming banks will go out of business. The banking system will be a quasi committee, government representatives and private bankers, and they will have oversight over their micro national economic systems and macro international economic investments. So you got to see all my videos to understand how I'm evolving my theologies. But for right now, just study them and you will get the overall general sense of where I'm headed as an economical theologian and a philosopher of economics. So as far as canceling debt, the governments and their banks will be able to print money. The government will control the money supply. But between printing money out of thin air and canceling debt out of thin air, that has to be done with oversight of quasi the government's banks and their government's oversights committees. So the flow of money comes through the through the governments, but it has to be done quasi with private bankers and government oversight. So government will have the last word on printing money out of thin air and canceling debt out of thin air. The governments will have the last word. As far as the quasi bankers and government oversight, the government will have the sovereign right to print money out of thin air and cancel debt out of thin air. The banks have to perform on behalf of the governments to be accountable for the money supply. The banks get to keep 100% of their profits if they stimulate commerce. And zero taxation across the board. Zero taxations to the employees, the laborers, zero taxations to the business owners, and zero taxation to the government. Throughout the world, this system works with zero taxation across the board for everybody. The citizens, the private sector companies, the banks, and the governments. Zero taxation across the board for all. So, as far as the global legal systems to monitor this new world multipolar economic systems that I am the theologian of, there will be international business laws and contracts that are accorded to, not only nationally in the grassroots of inter-nation microeconomics, but globally in macroeconomics, there will be world-based contractual norm laws to oversee this type of commerce uh, that is seen within the United Nations and within nations. So it's not like with as far as the crypto interchange of commerce, the blockchain, may I say the blockchain and sovereign nations cryptocurrencies that nations are responsible for coining. So I'm doing away with any individual having the right to print coins for themselves. That right belongs sovereignly to the nations, governments throughout the world, not individuals. But as far as I got sidetracked a little bit in my mind. Give me a second. As far as as far as the blockchain, there's confidentiality kept, so people can buy things and not have people intrude in their privacy of what they consume or what they buy. The same for businesses; they can trade with each other and not have to be intruded upon when it comes to, for example, in America, doing away with taxation. That means doing away with the IRS. But the IRS can't be totally eradicated because there's criminal activities in the world. There's drug dealers, there's murderers, there's illicit drug traffickers, illegal drug traffickers. There's criminal organizations. So when the IRS audits or any nation's auditing systems agencies, when they audit, they're not auditing for tax purposes. They're auditing for corruption purposes. So if they see criminal activities, they got the right to audit individuals, uh, blockchains, businesses blockchains, or government blockchains. If there's any corruption that needs to be investigated and audited, that's why the audit agencies will audit. It's not for the purpose of taxation, but it's the purposes of trying to prevent criminals from having a carte blanche to do criminal activities. So, let's take for example, America has the IRS. The IRS will not be auditing account books, ledgers, and journal accounting books for tax purposes, but for criminal activities. If law enforcement feels like an individual or a business is doing corrupt activities, then a government like the IRS will audit to find out if there's any criminal activities that are going on for law enforcement. But as far as taxation, the IRS will not be designated to tax anymore. As well as throughout the world, your auditing systems of this financial system is not for taxation purposes, but to make sure that if law enforcement feels that there's a criminal doing criminal activities, the nation has and the municipalities have the right to audit to find out if there's any criminality activities, if there's any organizations or individuals breaking the law, doing criminal activities. That's what the auditing systems are intended for. As far as the contractual laws of businesses and individuals, there will be contract oversight by the judicial system within nations' legal systems and within the global legal system. But we have to meet equilibrium as far as the financial laws and business contractual laws to have a fluidity within the national level all the way up to the international level. So there has to be like an equilibrium of norms of business laws and financial laws, contractual laws.